And Lakesh and Veritas, everyone, with honor, respect, and gratitude. Welcome to Your Energy, Your Health. Was it Be Responsible, Empowering Solutions? All right, so before we start, I'd like to start by raising the vibration in the space that we're in now by calling for the highest possible vibration, calling for the truth to come forward into our discussion so that the truth can be seen, heard, and spoken, and that we all be in that frequency of truth and having nothing but the truth. Shall we call for the divine feminine to bring balance back into our world, showing us the way through honor, respect, and gratitude, and calling for that highest possible vibration? I now ask for everyone to take a sip of water as water holds memory, and ask for the water to hydrate our brains and body. Now, I'd like everyone to take a deep breath in. 3, 2, 1, and let it all out. Take another deep breath in, bringing in peace, joy, and gratitude and life. And exhale out, releasing all stress and worry, all that does not serve you. And Lakesh and Veritas, everyone, I call forth the oneness and truth of the information shared by each one of us on this call, calling in the frequency of truth so that we all can experience all that is truth, as it is our purpose to bring forward the truth so that we all can benefit from this information shared with honor, respect, and gratitude to you all. The greeting in Lakesh signifies unity, where everything is related to one another, where everything and everyone is connected. It is the idea of a community where we can share with one another our ideas, goals, aspirations, so that we all, as one, can benefit and thrive. And Lakesh is that declaration in which we are clearing our spaces, the space we are in now, so that we may be able to bring in and bring forth that truthful, elevated, and enlightened discussion this evening. Clearing away those thoughts that we tend to pick up and carry with us from our everyday life experiences. The words En Lakesh and Veritas is a powerful affirmation that assists in bringing clarity and a greater understanding of truth to all who are present and to all who are listening. Our words have power. So let us remember and decide to use our words carefully, using words of upliftment, encouragement, and enlightenment. By doing so as a collective, we will help us to transform our spaces and places into higher frequencies and better experiences for each and every one of us here, as well as for those others who we touch. So, En Lakesh and Veritas, everyone, with honor, respect, and gratitude. Before we begin, I'd like for everyone to hold your water again in your hands. And I'd now like to ask for everyone here, with intention in mind, to send the frequency of En Lakesh to your water. And then take a sip of your water. We are 70% water, and the water holds information and memory, thereby assisting in incorporating this elevated frequency of En Lakesh into our cells and into the subatomic space within our bodies. This is all quantum physics. By doing this technique, it will allow for the ease and flow of the information we'll be sharing with one another here this evening. I just want to remind everyone that you can access the recording from this Clubhouse event and other prior Clubhouse recordings on Vimeo and YouTube by searching En Lakesh Studios. And please remember to subscribe if you not have already done so. You can also find more information and content on enlicashstudio2.com, so you can keep up to date with the information and content that is continually being added. All right, everyone, so let us get started. A quick review of our current events. There was an editorial from the Wall Street Journal reporting that jab approval in the young children, to be specific, toddlers and infants, occurred from the FDA. And to summarize, the article urges that everyone do their homework and do research, and not just listen to the 5 o'clock news, but really do your research to see what is out there when it comes to any type of jab that pertains to our children. You know, we have to advocate for our children. If we don't, someone else will, and it may not be in favor of your child. Have to become mindful and educated on what in our children's lives and bodies. I urge you all again to do your homework and your research to determine what is right for you and your family. Remember, we are the ones who have to fight for our own existence. A quote, a maxim from Laota's Call for True Divination card deck. So I encourage everyone to get a copy of your own card deck and join us on the Divine Nation workshops that will assist in experiencing the cards and learning how to use them. But it's not required if you don't have the cards, and just join in on the fun. So let's get started. Ready? Does anybody have any favorites? Oh, Anahara, you are not on mute. Did you have something to say?
No, I apologize. In Lakesh and Veritas with honor, respect, and
Oh,
gratitude.
no problem. In the Kitchen Veritas, honor, respect, and gratitude. All right. So this evening I have the pleasure of having parents here who advocate for their children through homeschooling. Welcome, Tiffany and Stacy. Tiffany of the Sun and Stacy of the Sun. Welcome.
Thank you. In Lakesh and Veritas with honor, respect, and gratitude.
And Lakesh and Veritas with honor, respect, and gratitude. So, and Stacy, you wanted to say hello?
Veritas with honor, respect, and gratitude.
And Lakesh and
Hey
Veritas, I hear you. And Lakesh and Veritas, honor, respect, and gratitude. All right. So let's start off with you, Tiffany. I'd like you to tell us a little about yourself and what prompted you to homeschool your daughter.
Yes, well, I, where to begin with myself? There's so many different components to share, but I guess from an educational standpoint, that's probably where I should start. I was a high school English teacher for 10 years, and I absolutely love teaching. It's a part of who I am, it's a part of my soul, but I was constantly stressed and overworked, and the environment of public school, even though I loved it as a student and I loved it as a teacher, it just fed into so much stress and anxiety. And I was constantly sick. And so after 10 years, one of the hardest things I ever did was quit my job. And I needed to find balance, but I didn't know how. And so I bought a house built in 1790, lived in the middle of the woods, off the land, became an herbalist and beekeeper, and literally let the earth and the bees heal me and teach me. And as I was doing that, I realized how much I was not taught in school, and how much, even though, I was teaching Homer's Odyssey and the Iliad and all of these, high level classical pieces of literature to 14-year-olds, it just, I missed teaching them the things that really mattered for their souls, and to teach them how to be better human beings, and to be the highest expression of themselves. And so as I healed myself and eventually got pregnant, I still it had never dawned on me to homeschool. Like I, grew up in the public education system. I participated in it, as an adult, as a teacher. And then even when I was pregnant, I was actually kind of opposed to homeschooling. I thought, if people homeschooled, they thought they were the experts in everything, and it just made no sense to me. And I would even say I felt that way probably even when my daughter was like maybe 1 as well, and almost even 2, and I had no desire to send her to daycare, and so I just thought eventually she would go to school. And then um, as I started to near those ages that she would, be in preschool and be in kindergarten, and leave the house and do what, I had always done, it just didn't feel right. And
Mhm.
I was reminded so much that what it didn't do for me, it did do some things for me, but what it didn't do for me, and I didn't gain what I gained to be the highest expression of myself until I stepped away from the traditional setting. And so it didn't make sense to me to send her anywhere and um, to take away the people who love her the most, and the experience she was having with us. And it was in we always had her highest and best interest at heart, and I felt if I then shifted that responsibility to someone else, then you know other people have a lot of other children they're working with as well. And so it just made more sense for us to start homeschooling her and teaching her. And as I started to do that, I realized it wasn't a lot different than what we were doing from the day she was born. The time a child is, even before, even when she was inside of me, we're always teaching them. They're always learning by
Mhm.
example. And so it's we homeschool her, but really what we do is just um, live life with her and show her how to be, the best version of herself, and honor her strengths and honor ours, and then we grow through our weaknesses together. That was a long answer to a short question, but that's the
No,
basic idea and why we decided to homeschool her.
yeah, well, I mean, the question was, required an in-depth explanation anyway. So yes, okay, it was very appropriate. Very appropriate. I mean, and a lot, from what I understand, um well, some of the concerns of the parents is, okay, are they getting the proper education and so forth. But what I've looked at and seen statistics showing that a lot of kids who have been homeschooled score higher on these tests when they supposedly advance whatever test they need to take to advance to whatever grade that they're considered, that is replicated in the standardized school system.
Well, and right, and what I'm finding with my daughter right now, she's 4.5, and if you look at 4.5-year-old curriculums, which is just funny, the word curriculum even exists with a 4.5-year-old, but if you look at 4.5-year-old curriculums out there, what she does and is able to do, because um, we are able to focus on what she wants to learn and focus on what her strengths are and spend as much time as she wants to on them, is she operates at the level of many 6 and 7 year olds. And most homeschool children I meet are more well versed. They're ironically enough way more social. They speak to adults very clearly. They look adults in the eyes. Their education and the academics that they seem to understand are far superior to other children in traditional setting schools at the same age group. And most of my 4.5-year-olds friends are between the ages of 6 and 13, with a couple 20-year-olds thrown in there and a 35-year-old over there, but
Yeah.
but the most of them are older. And anyone who's her age or younger, she almost feels like they're babies because they still operate that way.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
One thing that I'm starting to realize as uh, we're homeschooling Jade is that what she wants to learn is typically what she would be doing when she was in like 6, 7, or 8 years old. And so, for instance, the other day, um, we were just working on letters, and we were reading stories, and all of these fun things that most 4-year-olds are doing, whether they're in school or not in school traditionally. And then she looked at me and she said, "I really want to learn cursive." And I'm like, "Oh,
Mm.
honey, I mean, that's a little intense. Like, you don't even know how to write all of your lowercase letters, correctly. Like, I think that's a little stretch here." She's like, "Mom, I want to learn how to write cursive. Like, why can't I learn?" And I was like, "Okay." So I just taught her how to write, like a capital J, a lowercase a, just for her name, and she was committed, and she was doing it, and for like an hour she was practicing this, and the ability for us when she wants to stretch to that like 4 and 5 year leap ahead, we can tap into that a little bit. And
Yeah.
then, and then she started getting really frustrated. And so then we were able to stop and play and do other things. And then later that day, we were in the shower and the windows fogged up. And so she was practicing her J's again, and now 3 days later, she can write her name in cursive.
Mm.
and, and so it allowed us to kind of move into something that is more advanced than she would ever learn in a traditional setting, but then back up when it got a little too much for her. And, so it's such a personalized,
Yeah.
individual education that, I mean, children have such an advantage when the focus gets to be on them and their
Right.
strengths
And
and
then,
their desires. Yeah.
right, without that following that cookie cutter educational plan that's out there, that
Right.
when a child deviates from it, then they then may label them as, you know, not meeting up to standards, and therefore
Right.
put a label on them. And it's not necessarily so. I mean, I like the fact that it's individualized and tailored to the child, to the person.
Well, and some, there are a lot of different methods that homeschool families that I have met follow, and some of them have to do with delayed reading, delayed writing, pushing things, allowing childhood to be honored, and playing more to be the focus. And there's been a lot of research done that shows that um, before somebody's physical body is to a certain level, and we all grow physically differently, but before someone's physical body is to a certain level, they're not ready to activate the mental component side of reading and writing. And so in
Mm.
a traditional setting in school, everyone, at 5 years old, they start to learn how to write. At 5.5, 6 years old, they start to learn how to read. And some people at that age are riding bikes. Some people at that age are losing teeth. Some people at that age, they can reach their hand up over their head and touch their ear. Other children can't. And those who can't almost always get extra frustrated with learning how to read and learning how to write and
Yes.
learning math
No, I
because their
see that.
brains aren't ready. And so,
Right.
it's just, it's an advantage to looking at the individual child and what the child is physically ready to do and mentally ready to do. And that's what I think homeschool has just helped so many children with, and is working
Yeah,
in our family.
I think it also tailors their pace, because some kids then
Yes.
start to Zoom at another time than versus another. Because I remember when I was in Chicago, they had programs, and your child had to test for various schools, and they had like the gifted program. And
Mm-hmm.
and I had just moved into the Chicago area, so I didn't know about you had to test, and I was taking my daughter in there, and it was nervous for me. She was like, just playing. She didn't know what was going on, and they were testing a 3-year-old to see if they could read or write.
Right.
And I was like, I never like I just let her play and watch, shows and learn words from, programs and stuff like that. I didn't know to do that. And I found out that, the parents were actually training their kids from
Right.
1 year of age, so that they could get to the point so they can get into these gifted programs, if
Well,
you
and
will.
the true gift is having the gift of childhood, right? I mean, how many times in life do we really get years where we don't have to be stressed or focus on performing, and we can just be children? There's such a disservice that I feel like is being done to our youth, and that's why there's so many children who are stressed and anxious and
Yeah.
nervous and fearful,
Well, I think also malplaced. Now, I do
Yes.
want to bring in Stacy, because then she would have some input on this information.
Yes, of course.
Stacy. So, Stacy, are you there? Are you able to
I
speak?
am, I am
Okay.
here in Lakesh because oneness of what Tiffany just talked about, we have talked about teaching, and I'm just going to echo a lot of what she said. So I'll give a little bit of intro for me. I have served as a special education teacher for the last 7 years, and I have made the decision to leave the classroom after 7 years completion. And you talk about in terms of labeling kids, it's very frustrating. For me, I started in a private school for elementary school, and then I went to a public school, and all the contrast was so huge there, and it really shaped who I became. Um, so I had IEP as a child, and it was for speech. And navigating that space was very interesting from a child's perspective. But being on the other side as a teacher, it's very frustrating because these kids are labeled as having ADHD and this issue and that issue, but they're being children. They're not supposed to do certain things developmentally. And I think that's something that has been lost within the education system. So, education and my children are my two of my biggest passions. And so when I was given the opportunity to homeschool, it was just destiny in a way. So like Tiffany said, while my oldest was in the womb, I was reading to her every night, singing to her every night. And for the other two, the tradition, in a sense, continued on. So she was learning in utero. And so we come to 2020. She's set to start school in the fall, but COVID emerges. And so being a teacher in the classroom at the time, we had to pivot to being online. And what I noticed was that my my oldest, sorry, opening snacks. Um, my oldest at the time had this dependency on technology. Like she just had to see the flashing lights and everything, and that was concerning for me since everything was online, everything was remote. So my husband at the time and I made the decision, him having a background in teaching high school, we made the decision we'll just go ahead and start her off at home. I'm a teacher. I taught pre-K all the way to eighth grade at this point. So who else better to feed and pour into my own child than myself?
Right.
Um, and it's just something what Tiffany talked about in terms of the stress that teachers carry with them every day. We're a lot of our students second mothers. Like those, my students are an extension of my children.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that autonomy that's missing is is detrimental to teachers, to students, to the community as a whole, because a lot of these kids go into the school building and then they're compared against their peers and they develop this shame. And as we know, that's a low attractor, and it's a trickle effect from there.
Mm-hmm.
So play has lost its charm of being play-based learning. They are required to write. They're required to learn these sight words and read and things like that. It's not realistic. So I was
Yeah.
able to really tap into playing with her, and it was something that I needed to tap into for myself because as adults we lose that whimsical part of us.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to do a lot of play therapy. No, baby, no, not right now. And at the time I was training to become a yoga instructor, so I started to integrate that into our day. So for that mindfulness and just for the physical activity that a lot of our schools are not providing our students, and then even science and social studies, it's like a missed subject all of a sudden. So we were able to bring in different kits and things of that nature to just help to build her knowledge around that. Funny enough, she's in a summer camp, and it's a nature based summer camp. And I was asking her, like, what did you learn today? Her and my son, what did you learn today? Oh, we learned about the elements, fire, earth, wind, water. And so I was like, okay, so tell me about wind. Tell me about each one. And I was like, oh, just playing around, like, well, tell me about aerodynamics. And she was like, oh, well, aerodynamics is how the wind goes up. And I was just like, oh, you got it, dear. You have it. So that's one of the things that, would be missed inside of a traditional school because science is just not one of those things that's really focused on. I know at the school I was at, they did 90 minutes a week. Science is so much huger of a subject, and it's a very difficult subject, and 90 minutes is just not adequate.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the short of why. But it's become something that has continued. She enjoys doing it. And even my son kind of hopped in when I started homeschooling the oldest. And now the 1 year old is like, I'm gonna sit, I'm gonna be attentive too. And so it's just become what we do. And so she's
Yeah,
singing along and she's reading the book, quote unquote, reading the book with following along and tracking. So it's become a love. It's just reignited my passion for teaching, but
yeah,
it's kept them interested, which is something that a lot of our children
yeah.
do not have at this point.
Yeah. Can you share with everybody that story you told me about how your daughter, I what is her name again? Your daughter,
Melody.
Melody? Melody, yes. How she coped with anger when her brother did something. Her brother's 3 and she's what, 7? Is she 7?
She'll be 7, yes.
Oh,
So throughout my pregnancy, I was doing Ho'oponopono for my meditation. So she would hear and be around and hear it. So one time she got so upset and frustrated that she just stopped. Thank you. I love you. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. And so for me, I just sat back. Sorry, they're having a laughing train. Sorry.
I think that's just so cool. So she just went broke out with a honoponopono when she got angry.
Yes. And she still uses it to this day. So this was two years ago. So if I see her balling up her fist, ooh, the joys of kids roaming and playing. So
Okay.
she'll ball her fist, and I'm just like, okay, what should you do? You know what you need to do. You have the tools. Jump into it. So even now, I found like a song with the Ho'oponopono playing out. So that plays throughout our sleeping, and so it's just helping them to really stay in tune with it. And
Uh-huh.
so she will just start singing it, and it's just her joyful song that she's singing throughout the day, even if she's not frustrated. So that clearing just continues to happen, and the littlest one will do her rendition of it too. So it's something that's really a part of our family. And sometimes I have to take my steps back and go into it as well. And they know mommy needs this moment. So let's have this moment.
uh,
And they understand. They have understanding of it. So that tool of being able to teach meditation and teach that is something that's missed in the schools as well.
yeah,
And so many of our kids need that too, because just imagine if our kids could be coped with, yes, if they could cope and know how to regulate themselves when they go home, it can just go into the family and it can just
absolutely.
become something that transforms
Right,
families and communities, and you just see the residual effects,
right.
and it's
And
needed.
they're acting out in school because of maybe something that's some home situation. Tiff Serenia, do you have something to add to that as a school nurse? Because you see a lot of children and a lot of issues coming through there as well, or used
Yes.
to see anyway.
Yes, in Location Veritas with honor, respect, and gratitude, everyone.
In the kitchen, Veritas, honest, speaking gratitude.
Yes, I concur with everything that Stacy and Tiffany have said. And as a mom who considered homeschooling my own children, I didn't, but I did consider it. And the alternative was to have. I was blessed that my children were in a we were at the same school, but before Stacy got there, it was a different environment. And the pre-K teacher was all about play. She's like, play is their thing, and learn. And they didn't do. There was no grading or anything. So those children just thrived, and they would come back and visit her, and it was just such a just a joyous kind of thing. So I just love to see the children play. Even when they got older, they would come back to the pre-K room. But ongoing, I thought about my own children too. I have a son who learns very differently, right? And so he didn't he didn't fit into the environment of the rote learning and things like that. So there was a challenge right away for him. And there were many other children who were like him who would come to my office, and many of them were on ADHD medicine. And the children, my son was not, and the children were the ones, specifically the boys, they would come to me and they would be like, I don't want to take this medicine. I had some that would tell me it makes me feel dead inside. And, it just did something to me, when they would say that, it just was I felt horrible having to give it to them. And I would speak with their parents about it, about not giving them there's alternatives. You can do diet, you can do sugar, take sugar
Mm-hmm.
away, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the environment was such, the psychologist was pushing the medicine, the teacher was pushing the medicine because they were tired of the the things that were happening in the classroom. The parents were pushing the medicine because they didn't want to get the calls from the teachers,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so then
Absolutely.
you had the students in the middle of all of this, like saying they would run, like not come to my office or something,
Yeah.
and
And even
sometimes. Mhm, go
Yes,
ahead.
you're right. And even parents who, whether they're educated or not regarding that, they're those that are not educated, they'll just go follow the advice of the teacher and the psychologist that's there, or the ones that are educated, they don't have time to deal with it, so they just concede and then give their child the medication. They tried to do that even with me with my child, and I was like, a teacher was telling me this, that I may want to consider medication for my child. And I was like, do you know who you're talking to? I'm a neuroradiologist. And I'm like, you know who you're talking to? I said, are you qualified to tell me this? And, it just kind of like shut her up. But then when I thought about it, I'm like, well, if she's telling me this, what is she telling other parents? You know, so go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No,
I just
no,
had to
that's
speak my,
okay. They just lose the joy of learning. The whole thing is lost. I mean, the homeschooling thing, I mean, the children, you could just see the relaxation, compared to the
mm-hmm,
students in school. They would have to be like, this was a typical day where they, like, I walk through the hall or whatever, and they'd be like, stand in your square, don't get out of your square, stay in the line, don't turn around, don't say anything, don't put your hand up. That was what they were getting all day long. So there was no room for exploration, there was no room for um, learning, or even thinking outside of the box. So I could see why the children would only advance so far, because they were being frustrated and put into a box. And I had so many that would come to me with somatic complaints, headache, stomach ache, and things
mm,
like that. And many of them just wanted somebody to see them. So I would say, just come to my door and knock on the door. Come to my window. Just let me know you're doing fine. And they started doing that, and that was hopeful. But that
mm.
that's part of my experience.
Yeah, you were a place to escape and balance and align. Tiffany, you had something to say. I don't mean to interrupt. Please, you have something
Oh
to say?
yeah, no, I didn't want to interrupt either, so I just wanted to make sure I was being polite. I wanted to piggyback on what Serenia said, and to also from a high school level shed a whole new light on once all these medications are being pushed on the children, then like she's saying, it makes the children feel dead inside, and then they get to a point where then they start resenting their parents, and then they start resenting their teachers, and then they get to the high school level and they start learning how to be sneaky and lie about it, and then they start
Mm,
learning how to sell it. And so it
mm,
becomes this whole cycle of just constant low vibrational energy piled upon low vibrational energy. It just become, I can't tell you how many kids in high school who I knew who were taking their friend's Adderall because their friend didn't want to take their Adderall, but their friend who didn't need the Adderall wanted to take the Adderall because it made them feel different, and they wanted me to take it. It was just like this whole nother level of low vibrational energy attached to it all, and not to mention who's making the medicine, right? So we have this, everything's convoluted. But and when Stacy was talking about her daughter doing Ho'oponopono, it brought me back to, I taught high school 9th through 12th grade, and I taught for 10 years, and so I had thousands of children over that course of time, and I'm still very close to quite a few of them, and they'll either Facebook message me or Instagram me, or some of them I even have my phone number, and so they'll text me or call me, and um, every one of them who I am in current communication with, I have said to them, I didn't teach you the most important things. I know I taught you things that I said were the most important things that you needed to know for college, but I didn't teach you. And every one of them, the first thing that I went back and taught them was Ho'oponopono.
Mm.
And every one of them at some, and this has been over the course of the last 5+ years, and every one of them at different stages along the way has come back and said how much that has helped. You know, they're
Mm-hmm.
not like telling me about, you know, what they learned in the Odyssey or, you know, the William Blake poem or whatever, but they're talking about how Ho'oponopono actually really did make a shift, you know? And so that the skills that I know now are the things that I wish I could bring back into the schools, because they are, you know, teaching children how to grow sprouts and microgreens and how to garden and how to take care of themselves and how to call for the highest possible vibration or
Yeah.
activate their water. You know, like, just
Well, these are survival tactics that we're actually
right,
not teaching our children. You know, the schools, what they do is they teach children to be employees and not to survive, you know, and be sovereign
right,
in what they can do.
right.
So, you know, and that's what we are as parents, our role is to do that. Homeschooling will add that element of teaching our children how to become sovereign, you know. So I agree with that. One question I did want to ask is that, you know, a lot of people have concern about the time commitment, you know, and you know, because there's some people, you know, I had a discussion with actually, I don't, I'll bring you forward, Lauren, where, you know, parents are concerned about, you know, they have to work, you know, they can't, you know, they have to work to bring in the income, but they would like to have their child homeschooled, you know.
So
And so what are like potential solutions? What could be done? You know, do you have any suggestions? Maybe doing some, you know, I know the Asian community, they have their Saturday supplemental education every Saturday, and they're devoutly, all of them just go like, I guess they're Pied Piper, you know, and they go and they learn and they supplement their public school education with these programs.
One of the beautiful things that actually came out of this kind of shift in our country of everyone having being forced to be homeschooled for a little while is
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of people who I have spoken to whose kids were in traditional settings and then they brought them home, they were getting their entire days or weeks worth of work done in at 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so there's so much, and it depends, every age is different, right? But there's so much built in fluff time and transition time and disciplinary time and, you know, time to deal with 50 children instead of just one. There's so much extra built in time in traditional settings that it's not that way, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when you're being homeschooled. I right now I have a friend who has a 9-year-old, and they homeschool, but they follow a curriculum. I can't even think of the name of the curriculum right now, but they follow a curriculum, and they do it 3 days a week, 2 hours a day, so 6 hours a week, and her child is far surpassed everything that, you know, standard 8-year-olds are supposed to know.
Mm-hmm.
My child wakes up like really ready to start school at like 6 in the morning, and I'm like, honey, I need to have a sip of water and some food. Like, this is not. I am not ready. But you know, a lot of children wake up like that, and so it would be very feasible, you know, to get an hour or two of school work, for lack of a better word, or education or learning done in the morning, even before parents have to do any leave or go to a job or do any, you know,
Mm.
it would, that would, or spending more time on the week. But a lot of times, um, most of us were educated in traditional settings, and so we're so conditioned to what school's supposed to be, and we
Mm.
think there are like 8 subjects a day and there are 8 hours of the, you know, an
Right.
hour each of each subject. But it doesn't have to be that way. You know, some children want to spend an entire week learning about the science of a butterfly, and then creating craft projects to go along with it and adding math into it. And, you know, it can
Mm-hmm.
be this really, it can be as drawn out or as condensed as it needs to be for the child. So I would say every situation is unique. If Lauren, if that's specifically, I'm happy to talk to you about any of this, because it would definitely be able to be done with anyone's schedule.
Oh, absolutely. I think I think that's brilliant. Just listening to everything in the commentary and just the truth behind everything that's been shared. I mean, it makes me it makes me think like, why haven't I done this already? You know, it's so important, and I feel this palpable you know, frequency of joy and elevation, just excitement when we speak about education. And I mean, I can only speak from my experience when I was in school younger, you know, and that's, I don't know, 30 years ago. You know, there were times I didn't want to go to school. I didn't, I had this feeling of just how much, oh, I have to go. It's a chore. I have to be there, but I don't want to be there. And it's because I didn't feel a part of it. And I was,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it just, the experience wasn't good. And then when you have those experiences and they're not corrected or addressed, they amplify and they create a bigger experience. And then you go to doctors and you see things. It's just a slippery slope of just the wrong thing of what children should be experiencing. And so when we can look at it from the perspective that there is a system that can be implemented with the beauty of the uniqueness that supports a child in their individuality, and nurturing that. And like Tiffany said, you know, if you want to spend a week on the science of a butterfly and its processes, and if you want to study about the bees and the flowers and how they work together, if you want to study about the life cycle of a tree, you know, spend the extra time and feed the soul of the child with the life that's trying to communicate with it. And let them get excited and let them feel that joy. Because when you're excited and in that state of joy, you want to learn more. And that's what's needed.
Mm-hmm.
That is what captures the essence, the true essence of the child's interest, which propels them into being the best possible individual they can be. I, I am someone that does have my daughter still in, you know, the regular traditional conventional educational systems, but I have implemented, the goal is to homeschool 100%, and I'm working on that, and have newfound strength supporting me in that from this session. But integrating lifestyle choices and you know, the practices and teachings we've learned with Of the Sun and with each other in our group, and also just even following simple social media on like Instagram homeschooling groups that are dedicated to the life cycle of all life, supporting their children, homesteaders, people that are in tune with life supporting life. And really sharing that idea with the children is so important. Having them speak to everything, knowing that all forms of consciousness are here to assist us. Having them listen and ask a plant what it has to say, what it has to share. How are you here to heal me? Knowing that that's the way we address issues. Going to
Mm-hmm.
source, not to take something outside of us that is not connected to us to try to repair a disconnect. You know,
Yeah, it's just basically having the child go in deeper and really get into a better understanding of what they're being taught, you know, and being exposed to, which is a wonderful thing, which is a wonderful
And
thing.
that everyone, I mean, with what Lauren is saying, and with what all of us on the line understand, everyone and everything is a teacher.
Yeah.
So going through life, we
Yes.
are, from the moment we wake up and even in our dream state, right? Like every single thing is teaching us always. And so when you get to actually extend your time with your children and they get to be home with you longer and throughout the day, we're learning all day long together. Like there's no, like we go into our classroom and we like call it school only because I have a 4.5 year old and she likes to play school. So she wants to like say, okay, can we go to school now, Mom? You know, but like we wouldn't
Yeah.
really even call it anything other than life,
Right.
if she didn't want to
Right.
pretend to drive here, So it's
Right.
it's just every, like what Lauren was just saying, everything all day long. There's no separation, I would imagine, in any of our lives right now, and in our life, there's no separation between what's just family life and what's school life. I mean, we might
Eh,
just, the questions might be different and we might spend a little extra time, researching and exploring and creating a craft around something because in our mind it's school, but it's all just, we're just learning always.
Right. Well, one issue that I want to bring up that some parents have is the socialization issues with regards to homeschooling. And I know, Tiffany, you shared that you work with other parents to homeschool and you rotate, the education amongst the parents teaching
I was,
as one way.
yes, that people do that. It's called a co-op. And so sometimes other children will come over here and we'll teach a B class, or we'll do a craft day, or we'll do music, or we'll, do an herb class, or everyone will plant in the garden, or sometimes we just, call it a play session and everyone hangs out. Sometimes people meet up, and different weeks different people take lessons, like we're going to learn about the anatomy of a flower. This person will be in charge of the lesson, and all the children will be there and the parents are still there. This person, we're going to go on a nature hike and learn about all the native plants that are medicinal, and this person's going to lead the nature hike, but all the parents will still be there. So there are a lot of different ways to do that.
Mm,
Some people drop children off at someone else's house who's homeschooling,
mm,
and it's still different than a traditional setting. But in terms of socialization, I have found most children who are homeschooled are far more social than anyone else, because they haven't been told to not speak.
mm-hmm,
They
mm-hmm.
haven't been told to put their hand down. They haven't been told to not ask a question. It's not time to talk. It's not time to do this. They're just always active and engaged in speaking, whether it's to someone at a grocery store or to a friend they're playing with. I mean, because Jade doesn't go to a classroom with a bunch of other children her age, we make it a point on a very regular basis for her to be around other, humans that are little and, are around her
Yeah.
age. And so, we go to parks every week. We go to the beach every week. We at least have one or two play dates with friends. She does gymnastics, but I think people get so worked up about it, but in all honesty, playing outside with the butterflies and the bees and watching the squirrels is also socialization.
Mm-hmm,
And children need, and so is running errands. Not that it's, an
mm,
ideal form, but it is still interaction. And so I think nowadays children are actually more socialized than they need to be, and
right,
which
right.
and so it can all count as socialization, and children don't need as much as people think. But there are many ways to socialize, whether it's an activity or a play date or a co-op or
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
And I wanted to add to that. So Tiffany kind of brought up activities. I
Yeah.
think that was what we really relied on. So for Jay, she does gymnastics. For Melody, she was doing she's doing violin. She was doing dance class. Different field trips. We took a lot of field trips to zoos and to arboretums and things like that. So they naturally see kids. It's like, oh, another kid. Let me talk to you. It just happens, and it happens in such an authentic way that it can't be replicated within a school building, because a lot of times they are silent and this is not the time to talk. And I really was thinking about it the other day, like, when are kids supposed to talk socially at school for 20 minutes during recess? And it's
Mm.
just like, I know my daughter will talk until, from sundown to sun, like it just never ends.
That's
Like
right.
20 minutes is not enough for her. So it's like it's bottled up. So,
Yeah.
like Tiffany said, no, Mia, stop, please. Like Tiffany said, just that ability to really express themselves without having those indoctrinated ideals of falling in line and doing this. Raise your hand, put your hand down. It's not your turn to talk. Having that freedom outside of these four walls of school buildings are really helpful for them, and it's even helpful for us as parents too, because a lot of times, like, I did have that stress, like, oh my goodness, my daughter's only going to have her sisters and brothers to, really socialize with. But when she's out and about, she's good to go. She's like, okay, mommy, I'll see you. And I'm like, oh, excuse
Okay.
me. So, right. But it's a beautiful thing to really see. So
Yeah.
activities can be, really help with overcoming that
Mm.
supposed barrier with
Okay.
socializing.
No, thank you. Thank you for that. Now, for someone who wants to get interested, who's interested in delving into homeschooling, what would be the first thing that they could do in order to learn more about it so that they can then maybe implement that in their families, within their family, or their child, their children?
Did you have something to say, Stacy? I didn't want to jump on.
I was just gonna say, I think one thing is to decide if you as the parent are going to serve as the teacher, or if you need to, solicit outside help, some another person or teacher. I think that would be a good step. I know for a lot of states, you know, reading up on what the parameters on homeschooling is can kind of help give some guidance too. Not that you have to follow what they give, but it just helps to kind of understand. I realized after being a teacher and being in the field, it's a lot of things that are not known to parents, even with kids in school. So I think just reading up on, what does it really look like to educate your kid? Because what was brought up and is so valid is how the school day is extremely long, not
Yeah.
developmentally appropriate. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so we do think like, oh, well, they have to be in school 8 hours. No, that was why it was all created, because they were trying to teach kids to work in the factories and taking babysitting for the parents while they were in the factory. So that's what our modern day school system mimics. So,
Yeah.
being flexible and knowing like, what do you want to cover with your child? Like, what subjects do you want to have? What do you want your schedule to look like? Maybe you do homeschooling in the evening. That was something that we ultimately had to do, because I was teaching through the day, and sometimes they could, I would be able to teach my kids and my students at the same time. But sometimes it was more beneficial for me to just pause and reconvene teaching my own kids at night, because they can get my full attention, and it's still learning, it's still
Mm-hmm.
occurring. So
Mm-hmm.
that can be part of, especially for those that are working during the day too. So
Interesting. Okay. Tiffany?
I think the most important first step is talking to your child and about what they're interested in and what I mean, naturally you're going to know anyway, but if someone's coming in wanting to homeschool someone who's 12, they might not have been a part of what their child's been learning and how they've been learning, um, so I would say talking to your child about the ways they love learning, if you don't already know, the things they love learning about, if you don't already know, and getting just a general sense, just to put people's minds at ease of and you can do a bunch of different research, like what does a typical 4-year-old know, what does a
Mm-hmm.
typical 15-year-old know, what's a general idea. And just because some people are like, I have no, where do you even begin? I don't know what they're supposed to learn. I haven't been in 5th grade for however long. I haven't been in 2nd grade, and depending on where you look, you'll find very different answers. But um, there are also opportunities that you people can sign up with different public school systems or charter schools, and then say they're homeschooling and get funding from that school. Everyone pays taxes, and it goes to literally the individual children at public schools, and
Mm.
so you can get some residual, like, depending on the age, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 sometimes per year, that you can then use for school supplies or
Materials.
for classes or for activities or for musical instruments or whatever, art materials.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay.
I know there are also, this is kind of fascinating. It was brought to my attention recently, that for older children, you don't need to take SATs or ACTs to get into a junior college. You can
Mm-hmm.
just sign up and take classes. And once you've signed up and taken classes in junior colleges or in community colleges, is what I'm trying to say, in community colleges, then if you've done that for a number of years, then you can just transfer to any 4-year schools just straight from there. So I know a lot of homeschool families who kind of navigate it that way too,
Mm-hmm.
who, when their children are ready, then they'll start taking, either online or classes, at a community college somehow, and then transition.
Yeah.
Because most people's hesitation when I talk to them isn't about what do you do with your 4-year-old to homeschool? It's more like, well, what are you going to do when she's in middle school and high school type thing.
Right, right. I think, a lot, I know when my kids were in high school, they had opportunities to, especially in like their junior and senior year, to take college level classes that is probably the same programs that you're referring
Right.
to,
Mm-hmm.
because both of my kids took them. So that is a great transition, for your child. And it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard. It was implemented in their school, in their classwork.
Right,
So,
exactly. And there are also there are a lot of online homeschooling curriculums out there from
okay.
all different type from Montessori homeschool, Waldorf homeschool, um, more traditional homeschool. There are all different types of homeschooling programs out there. I can't even think of all of them off the top of my head, but I'm nowadays it's we're living in a very different time, especially after the last couple of years. And so all you have to do is Google it a couple times, and enough will come up for people to do research to either give them information to use or to put their minds at ease that what they're doing is appropriate and on
Okay.
target.
Okay. All right. Well, that was like really, really helpful. I hope, people will come and listen to the information with regards to homeschooling. I mean, this was a wealth of information that was shared, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Tiffany, Stacy, and the audience for chiming in and assisting in the dialogue with regards to homeschooling. It's great, and I gotta put in my plug. I'd like to remind everyone about whole responsibility meditation sessions that we have. The kids are even doing it. So we've got our sessions through Enlica Studios on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6 a.m., 12:30 p.m., and 8 p.m., Eastern time, for only 30 minutes. So that kind of help to, it's a way to dedicate that time, assist someone in dedicating the time using Ho'oponopono, a technique for forgiveness and reconciliation and gratitude, and assist in shifting the frequency and your trajectory of your life experiences into something that's greater. And then I also want to remind everyone that we offer Divine Nation sessions again, as we talked about earlier, given on Fridays. I think this Friday, maybe the next one, it's at 8 p.m. Eastern, but look out for the posting. It's just for 1 hour. And it's a way to use the Call for Truth divination deck cards, showing us how to use them, answering questions about ourselves, circumstances, and around others, questions about others, about the world. And the information provided through these cards are limitless. The workshop is completely free and a lot of fun. So is the whole responsibility meditation sessions. They're completely free. So I encourage everyone to join. And again, I thank you, Tiffany and Stacy. I'm sorry. Um, for joining us here in Clubhouse. And I actually look forward to you guys returning to share more of your experiences with us on Clubhouse, because there's a wealth of information in this audience here that we can share with one another, share these experiences, and contribute to humanity that supports our life and our energy. All right. So just remember that knowledge is power, and taking action on this knowledge is true power. So, everyone, thank you so much, with honor, respect, and gratitude, and Lakesh and Veritas.
And Lakesh
And
Veritas,
Lakesh
thank
and
you so
And the
Veritas.
much.
Christian Veritas, honor,
And like
respect,
I
and
said,
gratitude.
honor,
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 respect,
respect,
and
and
respect, and
gratitude.
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 Love and gratitude.